This classic whistle-stop presentation is brought to you by Out West. Love the West? So do we. Click the icon or go to scvoutwest.com.
A tunnel through simulated snow-covered granite walls is the route by which visitors leave the Sierra scene and enter the Great Hall. Across the hall, a most impressive exhibit looms above them. A narrow-gauge freight train is elevated 24 feet above the floor, on a bridge between the main hall and the six-stall roundhouse. The elevated 1920s train consists of a Nevada Short Line Railways locomotive number 1, 2 freight cars, and a red caboose. The red caboose was donated to the museum by Ward Kimball. To their right on the ground floor, visitors see a walnut sideboard from the Stanford Museum. The next exhibit is a narrow-gauge passenger train. At its head is the exquisitely restored locomotive Sonoma, followed by an 1874 combination car and the Silver State, a lavishly decorated coach. First used on the North Pacific Coast Railroad in Marin County, California, the Sonoma later spent almost 60 years on the Nevada Central Railroad, pulling trains between Austin and Battle Mountain. Retired from railroad use in 1938, the Sonoma last operated at the Golden Gate International Exposition in 1940. Today, the Sonoma is the finest restored example of the American standard locomotive in the nation, and exhibits the care and artistic talent lavished on engines in the 1870s. To the left is a standard gauge passenger train from the 1870s with its Virginia and Truckee locomotive number 12, Genoa, and a Virginia and Truckee combination car. This train is on an authentic 1884 Phoenix Iron Works bridge. From 1873 until 1908, number 12 headed express passenger trains between Reno, Carson City, and the Comstock Lode. This wood-burning 440 has been restored to its 1902 appearance and is still operable. Visitors walk between the two passenger trains to the center of the museum and can choose from several exhibits. Ahead is the roundhouse. To the left is the mirror volume. And to the right is the people garden, an area containing 9 life-size mannequins that are dressed to depict various railroad occupations, such as an engineer, the conductor, the track worker, all with appropriate attire and tools of their trades. Visitors can sit and relax here or examine exhibit cases of people-related artifacts. Working on the railroad is one of the great industrial occupations. Generations of strong, dedicated men and women have devoted their careers and at times their lives to the hard, often hazardous task of keeping the trains rolling. The People Gallery celebrates the contributions of many people, including blacks, Mexican Americans, Mexicans, Native Americans, and others, to the construction and operation of the Western railroads. Nearby is the architecture exhibit. Against the north wall of the building, a 4/5 scale facade of a 2-story passenger station includes a waiting room and a ticket office, with living quarters upstairs for the station agent. Once inside the waiting room, visitors can look into the ticket and telegraph offices, which appear to be in use and are furnished as they might have been in the 1930s. Opposite the Streamliner exhibit, visitors can observe the Gold Coast, a private car built in the 1890s but restored to its appearance circa 1948 when it was owned by the famous journalist and author Lucius Beebe. Its elegant dining room, bedroom, and observation lounge reflect an era when private cars or land yachts crisscrossed the country, visiting such famous resorts as Saratoga and Palm Springs. Colorful exhibits tell the story of the golden age of private cars. In 1970, Ronald Reagan, then governor of California, and Mrs. Reagan were entertained aboard the Gold Coast at a dinner which stimulated the governor's support of the California State Railroad Museum. Commerce is the subject of our next exhibit, a railroad car game board that provides hands-on experience, matching commodities with appropriate railroad transport, oil with a tank car, coal with a hopper car, and lettuce with a reefer. Through trial and error, visitors learn which cars would carry sugar beets, wheat, milk, lumber, and automobiles. Distinctive logging locomotives, specialized rolling stock, sharp curves, and steep grades are illustrated with artifacts, graphics, and a large-scale model logging scene. An audio-visual program shows logging engines, such as the Shay, at work in the forest of Northern California. The roundhouse, necessary to house and service locomotives in the days of steam, is railroading's most unique architectural form. It was a noisy smoking place where routine engine maintenance was performed. The museum's roundhouse features 6 tracks radiating from an 80-foot Union Pacific Railroad turntable outside. In the roundhouse, visitors will see giant steam locomotives including Santa Fe's number 1010, a large 262 that was used for Death Valley Scotty's record-breaking high-speed run to Chicago in 1905. The Union Pacific's number 4466, a Husky 060 switch engine, is located over a maintenance pit 7 feet deep. Visitors can descend to examine the working parts of this 125-ton locomotive looming over them. We next went into the roundhouse area, where we talked with Fred Rothschild, one of the maintenance men for the engines, who gives us a brief description of some of the locomotives on display.
This is a F7 model built in 1951 for freight service only on the Western Pacific. It operated between Oakland and Salt Lake City and between Oakland and San Jose for freight service only. It was never used as a passenger engine. It's a 16-cylinder, 1,500 horsepower engine, diesel engine, which in turn turns the main generator, generates electricity for operating the wheels. Been completely restored. In fact, I worked on it when the museum acquired it in 1981. And it's used occasionally.
And when you worked at the Western Pacific, you had worked on it?
I worked on this engine back in 1969 and 70 when I worked for the Western Pacific.
Great.
As a diesel mechanic. I do get to operate it once in a while when they do take it out to run it. This is an E9A.
Okay, for the Southern Pacific, and the cab has been
completely restored and refurbished. All the electrical work has been overhauled, and all the air brake equipment has been overhauled. This is in passenger service up until 1960-something, and they took it out of service and donated it to the Railroad Historical Society. And they in turn donated it to the museum. It's in fully operating condition, thanks to all volunteer help.
Great. All right, Fred, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Southern Pacific Railroad locomotive number 1, the C.P. Huntington, built in 1863, was originally purchased by the Central Pacific as locomotive number 3. The C.P. Huntington was transferred in 1871 to the affiliated Southern Pacific and assigned number 1. This unusual bicycle-type engine ended its service career as a weed burner about 1900, and after restoration by Southern Pacific, has been displayed for decades throughout the West as their corporate symbol. It is exhibited today in its 1914 appearance. Across from and contrasting the C.P. Huntington stands the largest locomotive in the collection, the Southern Pacific Cab Forward. It is almost 126 feet long and weighed more than 1 million pounds in working order. This locomotive was used extensively on the tough mountain grades of the Sierra. No other cab-forward locomotives of this type exist anywhere in the world. Southern Pacific Railroad locomotive number 4294 was built in 1944. 1 million pounds of steam and steel. Number 4294 is the last steam locomotive purchased new by the Southern Pacific and the sole survivor of 256 unique cab-forward engines originally developed for use in the Sierra Nevada. Retired in 1956 and later placed on outdoor display, this 6,000 horsepower giant is a monument to the era when steam locomotives were the dominant motive power on American railroads. The visitors, now in a carpeted foyer, come upon a brilliantly illuminated exhibit called the Mirror Volume. A beautifully restored 260 locomotive, the Empire, is set into a large mirrored showcase that allows every part of the engine to be seen, while an audio program describes this colorful locomotive and its history on the Virginia and Truckee railroads. Although resplendent in polished brass, gold leaf, and elegant striping, the Empire is a typical freight engine of the 1870s. It possesses the qualities of style and power that have made steam locomotives a permanent part of American popular culture. Set in a mirrored enclosure, the Empire surrounds the visitor with its beauty, a celebration of American 19th century industrial art. The last display on the main floor is Thomas Hill's enormous historic painting, The Last Spike. Thomas Hill painted this romantic, idealized image of May 10, 1869, 10 years after the fact, at the request of Leland Stanford. The painting includes several dignitaries who were either absent or dead on the great day. Space on the second floor is used to display a variety of special exhibits that may be changed from time to time. One of the first is the Toy Train Operating Society's beautiful and unique computer-operated layout and display cases. Our crew really enjoyed taping these scenes. The California State Railroad Museum has been considered the finest railroad museum in North America. Operated by the California State Department of Parks and Recreation, the museum depicts the history and significance of railroading in California and the West.
Shop, look, and listen right here at WhistleStopUSATV.com.